Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's In a Talent Informational. Today, we are going to be hearing about digital marketing campaigns from none other than Paramita Bhattacharya. Paramita Bhattacharya is a global marketing leader who is experienced at launching and scaling business growth and revenue with marketing vision, commercial strategies, and operational management. She has over 20 years of experience and has recently joined as the Chief Marketing Officer at Blurb, which is a software publishing platform leader, and she has just completed a stint as the global head of marketing at Nokia Technologies. Before that, she held leadership roles at Hitachi and Adobe, where she oversaw successful go-to-market, product launches, brand, web, and digital campaigns, and partner development. Today, we are super excited to have a fireside chat where we get to pick her brain on all of the different marketing strategies that we may be curious about, either in our personal lives or from this internship. And start us off with the first question of, how did you get into marketing? And maybe could you explain a little bit of your high-level professional journey?
How did I get a start in marketing? So I actually started with advertising, which is, part of marketing. I worked for companies like big agencies, if you've heard of ad agencies like JWT and McCann Erickson, and they were handling accounts like Nestle and Coca-Cola. So I will say that I always thought I'm lucky that I got a start with such big brands and got to see, sort of that advertising component, which is really glamorous and exciting. And then, as life would have it, I became an early digital adopter in the Silicon Valley. In early 2000, when none of you were born, I was getting on the bandwagon of what was early website marketing, what was early sort of digital footprinting. And that sort of really got me into, I would say, what today is known as a modern marketing framework. So everything that you guys are exposed to and that you are also building as part of your plan is a part of what is called a modern marketing framework, which is all about having, data, technology, digital platforms, product, and all of that sort of come together for the audience. So I was lucky. I learned from the right places. I spent about 20 years in different technology companies, as you heard Aina talk about it, and really went from one place to another, running more and more marketing. So, if my first job or second job was running web, I went into my next job running web and digital. Then I went into another job running web, digital, and product. And so I literally sort of made sure that I had a good experience, running all aspects of marketing, because I knew that I wanted to end up as a chief marketing officer or sort of at the C-suite, where I would require, all aspects of marketing. And marketing is a big, huge field. So if any of you are trying to decide which part of marketing, then you should sort of give it some thought, whether it's communications, whether it's digital, whether it's on the product side, whether it's on the partnership and business development side. There are definitely a lot of areas of marketing, that you can focus on. And generally, right now I run all of those teams sort of across the board, from communications to product to digital to partnerships and, international and geographical marketing. So that's my journey.
Could you talk a little bit about what a week in the life looks like as a CMO?
It's never the same, Aina. I will tell you that, especially not in the context of what you guys know we are going through in terms of COVID and other developments that are taking place. In general, my job is at the most highest level to market the product, build the business growth, and essentially bring revenue. It's a very simple one line. And that is typically how it would be for anybody who is, reporting into a CEO. From there, of course, it gets super complicated when you start to break this down. you know. And so generally, I would have for any quarter or any annual year a plan in place. And most marketing departments, most finance departments, most companies will have a plan. And that plan, works up to the business goals of the company. And within that plan, there are, like I said, there's different groups, and functions that run within marketing. So my week can be, focused on if there are new features in the product coming up, how are we going to message that? What are we going to call those new features? If we are launching a new Facebook campaign, what does the ads look like? And what are we saying? What did we do previously and what will come next? If we are doing a new partnership, then, how do we co-market with that partner? So, it sort of encompasses everything within all of the functions that come within marketing in generally a week. And I will tell you, I spend a lot of time on the financial aspect. So on a weekly basis, I will look at, because currently, we are in an e-commerce model, I will look at what are the e-commerce sales looking like, both on a daily basis and on a weekly basis. And is that what the plan was? Are we falling short? Does that mean we should change something in the next week? So I do monitor a lot of the sales and revenue objectives of the company, from the e-commerce component on a weekly basis.
Expertise. What does the scope and breadth of a marketing plan look like, especially given the context of a nonprofit like ours? So maybe you could touch on that a little bit.
And I will say that, I'll touch upon it in a general way, but I think you guys are super smart. You guys can sort of break that down into what your goals are. So I think one of the things, and this is not just a nonprofit, I think this would be even for a profit companies to say, what is my year one goal? What is my year two goal? And what is my year three goal? And that is because you don't do everything at the same time. And you sort of break that down on your annual goal perspective. So say, your 3-year goal for your nonprofit is to have a certain level of fundraising done and a level of community built out and say 15 programs that are running within that. Then you break that down into what is your year one goal of that, what is your year two goal. And then I would say from a marketing perspective, your go-to market for a nonprofit or irrespective of nonprofit, your first layer is your messaging. What are you talking about? What are you offering? What is the value? And then as you do that, you obviously have to define who is your target audience, which I know you guys have been working on. So, who is your primary target audience, which is your secondary target audience. You may be impacting seniors, but your target audience may be corporate people that are going to sponsor that. So it's really critical for you to understand who are you messaging. You have to have a messaging bedrock, or a deck that talks about what are the values and attributes and features that you are offering. In this case, it's a service, that's your product. And who is it that it is for? So you will talk differently to the seniors of what you're providing and to someone who is actually going to fund into your nonprofit. So I think messaging is key. I think the second thing I would say probably is in a nonprofit, and this is different from a profit organization, you would want to spend money cautiously. Finance is a big component of, managing marketing. And so you would want to do local outreach, again, depending on your goal, but I would imagine your local footprint is important. And so your local outreach and the way you message them becomes almost your testing ground before you scale up. Marketing is one profession where you should definitely be testing with smaller pilots before you scale up to, the entire United States or entire West Coast, or for that matter, the global. So when you hear about global companies, they've done the smaller thing before they've gone bigger. And then I would say, PR is important to a nonprofit. I think it's really important for you to get onto the right publications. And there are always PR campaigns and plans. And that's another way of getting your message out. And then I think the fourth one would be, to me, nonprofits are very much a place where partnerships are critical. Your own footprint is amplified if you can partner with someone, right? So you have to start to look at your ecosystem and say, if I'm trying to do this for seniors, is it senior homes I partner with? Or actually I partner with someone completely else where, this thing is going to grow further. And that could be a foundation, that could be a corporate entity, or something like that. So those, I think, are sort of the top ones you want to start doing. And then you can definitely expand into sort of, your social media campaigns, your, digital. Do you want to be found when someone searches senior, whatever, do you want to be found for those keywords? Then you're going to want to do, paid search, your SEO and sort of sophisticated aspects of marketing. But I think the basic fundamental blocks are what you need before you start that. If that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, so I just have a quick clarification question just on how businesses are running now.
Mhm.
So what do the changes in today's rapidly evolving society mean for the way that you now conduct business?
It's a tough time, I will tell you. So let me tell you what COVID marketing was looking like, or has been looking like. A lot of us had to pivot in terms of messaging, right? The world came into a lockdown, and that meant a lot of events and physical things that are part of a marketing channel immediately got shut down. And so even before you started to spend money on, take that money from a physical event where you would have had, 1,000 attendees or your prospects and customers come, and you're putting it on a digital platform and saying, okay, I'll try to do this virtually. You actually have to start talking about what does your product mean in the context of, COVID. So for example, Uber, if you look at Uber immediately had to go into saying, well, you have to wear a mask, or we probably are going to only run few rides. Same for Lyft. Airbnb completely shut down. So there are products, that had to go into drastic measures and businesses. But then if you look at the business of, Clorox made the most money this year in their decade history because people were buying, detergents, right? So it depends on what your product is, but the businesses had to pivot. All of us had to pivot very fast. And that's not easy for big companies, because all of this planning is set, all of the campaigns are set. Messaging was one. You couldn't talk about, family celebrations, for example, because you knew nobody can do that. So you wouldn't talk about that. Physical events were out, which means you were starting to host, which means you had to have technology platform. And then businesses can function if your employees are really not set up for virtual work, and not many were. It's easy. I would say in the Silicon Valley, all of us, it's easier because we are all very, technology savvy, but in different parts of the country, it wasn't easy to have everybody, start working from home on day one. And so companies invested a lot, or have been investing a lot, in transforming themselves that were not already transformed.
So I just have a quick follow-up to that.
Mhm.
So outside of COVID, like with new, like for example, you mentioned that you're now the CMO of Blurb. So
Mhm.
with new startups and just other technological companies popping up, does that affect the way you market or?
Yeah, your competitive landscape, I would say, is definitely one key area. So, when I say messaging, and this is, I would say, fairly a big topic, if any one of you end up with a marketing degree and go on to do a business school, you will still be, reading and studying and working on that. Competitive assessments and competitive landscapes are one big part of how you will message, even in a nonprofit. Who else is giving that service, and who else is doing that care? Who else has that product, and what are they selling, and how are they talking about it? So irrespective of small or big company, you're going to take into account what is your competitive landscape. And if your competitor, for example, has slashed their prices, you have to decide very quickly, are you going to do that same? Are you going to keep to it? Or are you going to come up with some other discounting strategy? And our e-commerce model is very much a very commoditized, competitive marketplace. So I have a calendar that runs on discounting, and we are always measuring, my teams are always measuring who is discounting what is the deepest discount, and which customers are looking at what level of discount. So there's definitely real-time elements of marketing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so my question was, how do you approach branding a company, like its products and services?
How do you approach branding? Well, brand is a big, big field. Everything from how you name a company, how you name a product, how you sell its features, everything is brand. how your customer service picks up your phone and says, may I help you? Or your chatbot says, how can I help you? Or the social, everything's actually brand. But within that, you know, usually an identity of that company is what the brand is. And the company and the brand are two different things. This is a little difficult probably for me to explain without sort of an hour of a lecture on it itself. But, you know, you can think about, let's say Google. So Alphabet is a company, you know, they do a lot of different things. As a brand, Google only focuses on a couple of things, and they are around, you know, how their search is their biggest product. And so a lot of their brand is focused on how we do connecting people, how you can search up your best friend from 15 years back, or, you know, something like that. So building a brand is a multi-year aspect. It never, you know, Uber didn't build a brand overnight. Google didn't build a brand overnight. Some are faster than others. Like DoorDash is so popular right now, you know, and it's a faster brand only because it's COVID and that kind of delivery systems. But brand is also how you feel about a company. Like if I ask you, okay, give me a name of a company that you trust. Give me a name of a brand that you trust. Any field. Give me a name. Anyone.
Google.
You trust Google? Okay, no, that's good. I mean, you know, you always probably find everything you're looking for, so you trust Google. Google probably actually very subliminally and overtly ran campaigns that talked a lot about things, including trust, over the years. And that's the feeling you get when you talk about that brand. So brand is not just what the company is doing to you and to the customers, but it's how is the customer thinking of that? You know, I mean, we know at one point of time, none of you guys are Facebook users. I know you guys are all into different platforms, but at one point of time, Facebook was very popular. As a brand, as a business and a company, it's very successful even today, and especially as we will go forward. But as a brand, people don't feel that great about it, you know, with a lot of things that have happened in the past. So brand is a lot about, yes, the product and the service, but also how you feel about them, you know, what your emotions are about them. And so a lot of brand marketing is in the emotional aspects of building up that element. I don't know if it answers your question.
Yeah, that answers my question. I have a quick follow-up. You might have already talked about this, but like, how do you really like, you talked about like creating one about like the customer's point of view, but how do you like sustain a brand over time? Like, how do you keep that relationship, like that customer and organization relationship?
You know, research is a big component of marketing. So both consumer research, competitor research, market research, customer research. I don't know if any one of you are going into research, but research is a big, big field in terms of how you run marketing. A lot of my marketing is based on insights that I get as a result of the campaigns we are running, but also as a result of third-party research that's happening in that industry that I am in. You know, that is talking to my consumers, that is talking to, you know, the products that I'm selling. So you basically do brand surveys, brand things every year or every 2 years. You understand where your brand is in relation to the customer. And the best way to do is to understand, you know, how you are taking it forward. You will always add to the brand, right? That would be the goal. So if you today had one product, you know, like in your case, in your nonprofit case, if you have one service today, you're growing with another service, you're growing with third service, you have to continue to communicate with your audiences, right? You have to continue to talk to them about what you're giving. And the best way to maintain brand is to maintain consistency. You can be 1 year, be this fabulous brand that's giving the best discount, best offer, best product, and the next year falling off. And then expecting that, oh, you know what, you can go back and have that customer again. You've probably lost that customer. So the best way to continue to build brand is to continue to be authentic and continue to be consistent in your interaction. And that can be across, whether a customer is calling you, whether they're on your website, whether they're buying a product, whether they can return and cancel a product, every aspect of your, business. Answers that somewhat?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much.
So for someone who would want to go into the marketing field, what advice would you have for them? And what do you think what type of skill set should a person have?
I think you have to be excited. If you are excited about a product and some of these functions that I talked about, any of these functions, and if you want to understand the relationship between a product and an audience and how to build on that, then I think marketing is, where you want to be. Now, remember, marketing is a lot about data. So you could be very much a data cruncher and be working in marketing. I have a data analyst that's, coming onto my team. He does not care about, any relationship. I mean, he cares, but, that's not his first thing. What he does is he looks at the data, he crunches the numbers, and he comes to us and says, well, this is how your customer behaved last week. This is how things are. So, even when you guys are thinking about marketing, ask yourself, what are your functional skills? That would be first thing. And when I say functional skills, like, I love math. I want to do, I want to continue on the data track. Yes, there is probably this thing. I love, PR and social media and that kind of a thing. I think that's definitely a big component. I see a ton of interns coming through. I've had interns in the past who have all wanted to work on the website and on the social media plans and, campaigns like that. There are some folks that are very much business development oriented. They like approaching new companies, talking about new ideas. They're into innovation and things like that. And certainly if you are thinking like that, you would be great in marketing. So think about which some of the functional areas that that align to your interest. I think you have to be interested. And then, what skill set then you go about building around it.
So I just wanted to ask, what does digital marketing look like in this time of COVID-19, and has its role changed in any way because of the pandemic?
Yeah, so, somebody else was asking sort of, how do you keep up with emerging things? I think the biggest thing was people stopped shopping, right? In physical terms. So everybody had to find a way to get their product online. That is just it. And there is no going back, actually. In many ways, a lot of us, I was on a CMO roundtable yesterday, and I think the discussion that you guys will actually see impact surface, a lot of products will now actually live online because people have found a way to make them live online. So that's a big deal, because marketing to brick and mortar, or your stores, your physical stores, is very different from how you do that through digital, because you have to have payment systems, you have to have logins, you have to have security, you cannot have people breaching, you have to have shipping and deliveries. In my business, we've had the maximum problems around shipping and delivery because UPS shut down in areas and countries, and we do global, and deliveries were impacted, supply chains were impacted. So I think we still are feeling the impact of COVID. COVID is not gone, as you all know, but one of the biggest impact of COVID to digital is that a lot more now are digital, which means if you are buying digitally, you are going to be marketing digitally also a lot more because your product is digital, right? Not that you will not, when you have a chance, you won't go back to doing a big in-person event, or something like that, launch or a PR, breakfast, but you are going to spend a lot of time having already figured out some of those problems solving online. So, I would say there is just more and more digital, but there are also problems with that'll come that we'll have to all solve around it, but more pressures on digital.
Yeah, thank you. That made a lot of sense. And I have one follow-up. It's not necessarily related, but you spoke about partnerships earlier, and I'm one of the interns. I'm kind of currently looking into the possibility of nonprofit partnerships for InnoTalent. So is there advice or tips you could give that could maybe help in a talent find the right partner?
I think figure out from an inner talent perspective the different areas of that service, and the target audience. Like I said, if you guys are thinking, hey, we need to reach a certain money goal by the end of this, then there is a certain kind of partner you will go after, or you can go after. Then you're hitting up a lot of the corporate partners and things like that. If your goal is, I want everybody in the city of Cupertino to avail of this service, then your partner is the city of Cupertino, or some organization that has local outreach. So I think figure out first what is the goal at the business level, and then how is the function of a partnership contribute to that goal, because that's everything that marketing should do at the end of the day. Like I said, at the end of the day, my goal is to say, did I meet that revenue goal? Did I meet the business goal that was set? Marketing is not self-serving function, obviously. So figure that out. And I think as soon as you guys start to put that down, you guys will start to say, oh, you know what? We should have a partnership with a club like this, because we are trying to get to this group of people. Or if our goal is around here, then, we want to be more community oriented, and we should have some partnership in that sense. But I think partnership is definitely a place you guys should focus on.
Thank you.
So the first question I had is kind of a two-part. So what does it mean to go viral, and why is it significant? And then also, what is the how, where, and why of a viral post, and how does it affect marketing?
Honestly, I don't think anybody knows a formula for viral. Viral does not, I have never believed viral can be created. You can try, but viral is often the unexpected. Things that have gone viral is probably because no one's expected that. And it usually is nothing that is somebody has deliberately created. But I will tell you that, the biggest area of viral would be social. That's the biggest way of going viral, right? The whole idea of viral only came up when, the social media platforms have been in place. And so I think the key component of a viral campaign is it shareable, right? Is it shareable? Like, for example, this lecture of ours cannot go viral because it's not a shareable thing. But you can create something that's a tiny, 20 seconds or 2-minute stuff in an unexpected manner, and maybe that'll go viral. So shareability is a big key component of if you're going to try to create a viral campaign. The other thing is, think about who it is that you're talking to. It all comes back to the target audience. If your target audience is seniors, and your social media posts are usually about, how to take care of your health, how to, learn new gadgets. And then one day you put out there how to dance, or just, 5 older ladies, doing a crazy dance or doing a TikTok, you're probably going to have people look at that and laugh and probably share out onwards. So it is the unexpected that will usually lead to its virality. But to understand human psychology of the unexpected is hard, and manufacturing it is harder. I would say do the best things for your social media campaign. Chances are it will go viral in some form, if not like crazy viral, but it will get adopted the right way, or it will be seen in the right way, or, it'll have its own traffic and momentum.
Yeah, I had one more quick question, and it was, how do marketing strategies differ for different products or different things that you're trying to sell?
I don't think strategies differ. I think your plans differ based on your target audience and your product. What is your product and what is your target audience? And I would say the maturity curve of a product line is definitely important. If you have just introduced a product versus that product has been in the marketplace for 20 years, obviously your marketing strategy is very much different. And the way it is different is talking to a new audience about a new product is different from talking to an existing audience about an old product. And your strategies will be different because you're then talking about what have you added to this product today? Versus in a new product, you're talking about all the things the product has because it's a new product. An old product may be something that people have already used for a long time. And then it's like, okay, here is some new thing that we want to talk to you about. Or we are giving you an additional service with this product that you've already been using for 20 years. So in that sense, the maturity curve and the adoption in the marketplace will make it differ. But otherwise, your strategies are all based on what is your product and market fit. That determines your marketing strategy.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned messaging is crucial in marketing, and currently for InnoTalent, one of the marketing strategies we're hoping to utilize is email marketing. And I was just wondering, what is the best way to utilize email as a form of marketing? Are there any certain like do's or don'ts?
You know, you have to have email addresses from people, right? Before you can email market anyone. So I think your first goal is how are you collecting those addresses? California law now is fairly strict on privacy. I don't know if it differs for nonprofit, but I don't think it would. So be very careful in terms of having people opt into your communications. It's really important. You know, we have legal coverage and counsels that will go through this as part of marketing groups anywhere in any company. But even for a nonprofit, you should be aware that if you collected, you know, you held an event and you collected 2,500 email addresses, you told people to sign up so that you can communicate, you have to make sure they are clearly giving you permission to communicate. So that's definitely a critical thing. And California especially has a law around that, and Europe has a law around that. And then I think to me, email marketing is the most effective forms of marketing, actually. You know, it's still very cost efficient. It doesn't take the kind of dollars other digital forms take, but it is also a lot of blindness. You know, think about how many emails you get. And as somebody as, you know, me, Rocky Kalpana, who have purchasing power, the amount of emails I would get from products, you know, is pretty phenomenal. So I think the things to do is you take your messaging and you break down how you are going to talk to this customer whose email you've got. What are you going to tell them first? So cadence of emails is a very important thing. It's usually a journey for any email campaign, you know, unless you're just doing one single one-time announcement, which you can just do one-time announcement. But if you're going to do email marketing, then it has to be a cadence of a flow. And ideally it needs a background, you know, it needs an email provider, it needs a database with that email provider. And they would be able to tell you from a platform perspective, you know, you have a bounce rate or an open rate, you know, 80% of people open, 20% didn't open. So you kind of start to understand, well, you know, either it's a wrong email address or for some reason it's not getting delivered. So it's a fairly in-depth function, and it's a function that a lot of expertise people have acquired and a lot of sophistication is there. Like I can segment my email marketing into you bought from me twice versus you bought from me 5 times. The kind of offers I'll give you versus the kind of offers I'll give you. But that's a very sophisticated layer. But I would say for your nonprofit, you should absolutely consider email marketing. Just do smaller chunks in the beginning and figure out, even before you send your first email, what is your cadence? Will you send one monthly? Will you talk about what are the things you're talking about? Because, you know, email is a one-on-one relationship. Even if you are blasting it to 200 people, for every person who gets, it's a one-on-one relationship. So you are setting expectation there. So remember how to carry that expectation forward. That's important.
So you've had a lot of experience, of course, in marketing, and I just wanted to know, from your experience, what would you say is the most effective marketing strategy? And I know that that probably changes with different products. So with a nonprofit like InnoTalent, what would you say in your experience would be the best marketing strategy?
So I'll ask you back. What do you think in the next 6 months you want to do with InnoTalent? What is your goal?
Spread it to as many people as possible.
So it's awareness, right? You are trying to make people aware. I think you should absolutely look at, you know, you should definitely open up a social handle for sure, which I think you already have. but I would say your local outreach is your first level of awareness. And then you start to scale beyond that, and you can start to look at sort of, I wouldn't say any sort of paid media at all, but I would say probably, you know, try to get a story published somewhere. You know, usually PR is not costly unless you're trying to take out a press release, but instead of a press release, like, you know, pitch your story to newspapers, publications that want to talk, you know, that are focused on different social topics. And I think that will give you a lot of mileage, but build your mileage around your community. And, you know, there's one thing that we do a lot these days. It's called influencer marketing, which I would say for you guys would be in the form of, can you build champions within your first base of people who are interested in supporting you? They become your champions, so they are taking it forward then, you know. And a lot of times in nonprofit, that's how they go forward. Like I, you know, mentor and support a particular person, but I end up championing that nonprofit, you know, to a lot of other places that I think is relevant. So I'm basically a champion for them, which, you know, is not how I started. But if you can build a bench of your ambassadors, you know, champions, I think you will magnify, aside from a social platform, aside from a PR, aside from a local outreach. You know, see if your city council will give you 10 minutes during their open mic forum to talk about your program, or other cities will do that. You know, state government thing will do that. You know, pitch your story to the television evening, you know, news people and say, will you give us a 3-minute this thing? But you should have documents built towards that. Who are you? How many people? What is your goal? What have you achieved? You know, what are you trying to do, and all of that, so that you can pitch those kind of stories. But I think those are some of the things to think about.
Okay, thank you so much.
So one thing that I am genuinely curious about is that, given that InnoTalent's mission has evolved, maybe not mission, but the services that we provide, especially given COVID, but even over timing of the last 4 years before the pandemic, all of our services have dynamically evolved. So my wonder is, how do we account for that excitement and growth initiatives and growth opportunities within our marketing messaging? And generally speaking, do you have any do's and do nots, suggestion, guideline, maybe, that you could share?
I think you have to just talk about it in the current what are your communication vehicles? Like, how are you already talking to your seniors or other people about your service? You just go back and talk to them. You know, messaging is actually never static. You don't do messaging, you know, so I'll tell you, like, before COVID, January, February, we were running a couple of messages, and then COVID hit us. We changed, and we talked about the idea of people home, and, you know, how can you use blurb to build the right kind of, you know, books and photo books and memories and stuff like that, and publish them. And then, you know, we know people are coming into summer, and we have a new product, and we are already talking to them and talking about, hey, you know, this is a new product, a new feature. So within your existing communication, you constantly talk about the new things. You know, that's how you updo your messaging. You have sort of a framework where all the new features. So this is where, if you were already doing email, and say you already had one email that had gone out 2 months back and you talked about some things, you basically send an email saying new things. You know, we are launching this new thing. Are you interested? Sign up. So you basically constantly update, assuming you have, you know, that much frequency of actual things updating. But sounds like you do. So yeah, don't forget to communicate. It's only helpful when people know about it.
Pinky, I think it seems like a lot of the interns' questions were surrounding around this concept of how do we, as a nonprofit, do these certain things. And part of the challenge, and just to give you some background, is that this nonprofit's about 4 years old, and it's been a grassroots effort. It's really, you know, kids of the community that were going to senior centers, doing dance performances, and then not to be sexist, but the boys wanted to come in and help in different ways. So they started the tech help, and now girls are helping with the tech help. And then COVID kind of locked them all up, and they still wanted to do this stuff. And so they've ran almost 60 different classes now online, whether it's like Bollywood to Java programming to origami to like, there's a whole spectrum. But all of this, and now what's also interesting is I think that there are more students involved in either attending the classes and or pitching in outside of California than inside of California. This really was a Bay Area initiative. And so if you picked up that sense is that this has really been just grassroots. And what is a certain degree of hunger is this concept of what does a marketing plan look like for an organization that's already bigger than itself. It's like, how do we get, like, in lieu of not doing anything, it's been this far, how do we not screw it up? And how do we feed the process? And
I think you're talking about scaling. You know, scaling is a very difficult proposition usually, because what happens in scaling is what has worked until now does not work. That's how actually startups mess up, you know. Startups that have come to 100 million doing something, when they try to reach 500 million, it is not the same tactics that work, because that's in the next band of a scale, you know. So I think it's a question of you guys taking, you know, taking stock of how much do you want to scale? You are in a great position, right? Like, one scaling I can see is already, because it's virtual, it's actually good. You're not having to travel and spend money. And if you have all these 60 classes on demand, you know, start running an on-demand channel. You know, start building out that base of customers and seniors in different cities. Maybe you want to do everything West Coast first. So there are ways you can break down and say, you know, we will scale in the number of what. I think that's important. Like, where are you going to scale? Where do you want to scale? And then you back it up with marketing within that. So again, it comes back to basically your business goal. Like, okay, if I want to scale to 3,000 seniors outside Bay Area, what are those cities? What are those regions? And then it's a question of, well, how can I do that? Or maybe I, you know, first run an on-demand session. I get them to sign up, you know. Are they paying? Is it free? Well, they may be getting 5 classes free. And then after that, you know, we are giving them a service of $9.99 for 25 other things. So figure out what it is that you are scaling. What is it that you want to do, you know, and then look back and say, do we even have the resources? Can we do this? But you will definitely have some tension in terms of wanting to scale, not having resources, but it's something you can figure out. It's not, but I think you need to know where to scale. I think that's probably where, you know, I would say focus, and then you can scale. You can be, you know, completely a national organization.
That's where it's lending to, but this is great. And I think 2 or 3 times you hit on the real issue is we're not sure what the vision and goals are yet. And it's not crystal clear because for all intents and purposes, there's been a momentum and a collection of energies that are just blossoming in all kinds of different ways. And so putting behind those messages some sort of branding initiatives, I think today was awesome. Sorry, Aina, I just wanted to kind of synopsize the what I'm seeing from this dialogue.
If possible, could you touch on omnichannel marketing? I know.
So there are actually 2 terms that marketing uses. One is omnichannel and one is multi-channel. Omnichannel, generally, if you're doing it right or if you understand it accurately, is what I spoke about, which is the customer is at the center. And then a customer's behavior and pattern is how you are actually building the multiple channels. So if I'm a customer who spends a lot of time on mobile, you know, mobile is a channel. And if I actually purchase on the web, you know, then, you know, web is a channel. And the way you will market with omnichannel is to make sure that I can, as a customer, go seamless from one to another. And when I am doing that, I'm not seeing different messages. So you as a company and as a brand will have to be very clear what the consistency of your messaging is across devices, across platforms, across channels, where your customer lives. So if your customer walked into, physically into a store and saw something and then came and checked your website, it shouldn't be different. It should be the same. If they opened up an email from you, the actual construct of all of the elements should be the same. You shouldn't be talking about your product differently in an email versus, in the website versus, in a real event versus in a trade show or, whatever it is. So it's really putting your customer at the center, and all the channels that surround a customer is what omnichannel is. And most of the time, you will never, unless you are multi-billion-dollar companies, and even then they won't do it either. They'll, carefully, you won't pick all the channels. You will pick the channels that most of it is getting, because you won't never have the money to do that much channel coverage. So if your seniors are mostly living in the middle of local community reaches, even if you are talking to seniors in Colorado, you will want to make sure that the Colorado community, is showcasing your messaging in the same way as the, community in Bay Area is. And that would be, in how you're looking at your different customers and their sort of omnichannel experiences. There's a lot of platform tools now that is getting used, which is a big conversation that I did not do in this call, because it's a little rough to do that conversation. It's sort of technology meets marketing, and a lot of the back end of this is, all of the data is sitting on your marketing tools and platforms, and there are people who are pulling that out to understand and know that information. You can even purchase third-party, first-party information, but that's really sophisticated level of marketing. So I would not go anywhere near omnichannel marketing unless you've built a sophisticated marketing framework and a machinery, and have marketing tools and marketing platforms.
Just a quick FYI there too, Pinky, that, sorry, Permita, that last week we had a guest speaker who talked about some of the marketing tools and talked about HubSpot specifically as a tool, and just gave a crash course.
I think you should choose that. Yeah. Not HubSpot particularly. I think what you should do is get somebody from the community that you have already built, right? Like you've already got professors and people professionals coming in. And again, get very clear what business goal is. It's not about your brand. It's not about anything. It's who your customer is. What is your business goal? Even in your nonprofit, right? Or your goal for your nonprofit. And then work with them for a layered sort of plan where it's like, what is the first thing you should have? HubSpot can help you send email and also, push messages on a couple of things. HubSpot pricing may be right or not. Oh, they might have nonprofit pricing. A lot of tools will do different pricing models. So you can maybe sit down with somebody who comes with that marketing tools and platform background and says, help us build. Should we get an ESP? An ESP is an email service provider. Should we get a complete, back-end thing, part of which will help us do something this year and part of which will help us do next year? I definitely encourage to have a tech stack defined. And Rocky, maybe you can help the team, get to that right tech stack, because it gets super complicated super fast. Even for bigger companies, like there are tons of tech stack we are not even using, but we are paying for it. Because, it's either it was right when we bought it and then we moved on to something. And a lot of tech stack now is like, even we do this kind of a thing. So you buy this and they'll say they do 3 things. Then you will need another tech stack for something, but they also do those 3 things plus 4. So you have to get super careful because you are a nonprofit. You don't want to waste your money, in terms of how is it that you're building. And it's actually what will power your marketing. Never forget your customer, never forget those things that I talked about in the beginning. but your scale and powering will also come from having a tech stack behind this. Because then you're like, I have 200 email subscribers, but tomorrow if you have 1,000 subscribers, how are you going to get to them? Well, that's the tool.
Well, thank you. I can only imagine how busy and dynamic like all of your weeks are. And so it is such an honor for you to come and spend some time with us and, you know, guide our team along this process. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's Inner Talent Informational. And with that, we will wrap things up and I will see you all at the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.